Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Wisconsin Wrestler Podcast. I'm your host, Teague Fenwick, coming to you from Holman. And Steve is not joining me as we're in the middle of a school day. I know some people might have school off, but joining me actually is, I'd say co-host, but he's also the host of his own show here. You might call this one the Wisconsin Vision Quest Podcast. I have a Vision Quest podcast host, Brad Crook, on with
How's
me.
it going,
We're kind of
guys?
doing a little collaboration deal.
Much appreciated. It's fun to be here. I'm excited to talk to Ben and be able to interject and kind of find out some info we didn't dive into in his book maybe.
Whoa.
I know I'm excited. I know we've been putting stuff out there so folks know who we have on, but since he's my biggest guest yet, I still have to give him a proper intro here. Of course, our guest on today introducing, he's a two-time state champ from Arrowhead, two-time NCAA champ and two-time Hodge winner from Missouri. He's a member of the 2008 Olympic team, was a title holder for Bellator and the One promotion, co-owner and co-founder of AWA. Some might know him as the young superstar, but I think more people know him as Funky. Also the author of autobiography of his book, Funky. Talk about none other than Ben Askren. Ben, it is an honor to have you on, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I don't know why it's taking us this long. I love Wisconsin wrestling. And you guys never invited me on either podcast before, so it's nice to be able to do this. I love Wisconsin wrestling. I know I'm involved in a lot of other things, but man, I probably spend more of my time coaching Wisconsin youth and high school wrestlers and watching it than probably anything else I do.
Yeah. I like the fact that you narrated your book too. That was awesome.
It was so hard. It was really hard. I really didn't want to do it. And my wife helped talk me into it. And then it was as miserable as I thought it was going to be, because like on a podcast like this, if you mess up a line or two, no one knows what I was supposed to say anyways. But you're reading your damn book and then you mess up one word and they're like, do it again. Do it again.
Yeah.
I don't want to freaking do it again.
Right, exactly. What are we starting? How are we starting off here?
Yeah, I guess for me, I thought, Teague.
I have a really fun question. Maybe more of we might start off with a little friendly debate here. But Ben, as you heard, Brad's podcast is titled Vision Quest.
Yeah.
And as I learned in your book later on, you do not like the movie Vision Quest. So where do we start? Where do we start with this one? I guess I'll hear your side first. Why aren't you a fan of the movie Vision Quest? I know you think it's like a little cheesy in 80s and whatnot, so I can see that, but
it's very cheesy. The 80s were not a good time for anything. Music, terrible. Movies, terrible. You know, you got things like The Roadhouse coming out of the 80s. Only good. They're only good for how bad they actually are. That's it. And I guess my main complaint with Vision Quest would be that I would say the main plot line of the story is this wrestler who wants to cut this tremendous amount of weight. So I think that really focuses on a negative aspect of the sport of wrestling, and then obviously the actual wrestling moves are not really up to par. So I mean, I think it was cool that they maybe featured wrestling in a major motion picture of the time, but I don't believe it was framed in a very positive light, I guess I'll say.
So right, I had Frank Jasper on. I talked to Shoot, and we got some information that the guys that were in the movie, now that the episode's been released, they were actually wrestlers from the university that was in the area.
Right.
Now, granted, things were choreographed, so I mean, obviously they want a match to look a certain way, but that's why he brought wrestlers in. And it's funny that you bring up the like how unauthentic or whatever it kind of felt or whatever, but because Frank was actually quite separated from everybody. He didn't get a lot of time to spend with the wrestlers because they were all in their own area on the set, things like that. So he was in a wrestling room, but he never really got close time with any of those guys that were kind of together. So, but hey, I can respect that. It was 80s, man. What do you expect? It was mullets and rolled up jeans, you know? It was a good time.
Yeah. I agree. All right, now you're something that now the fun question. Give me the tough one.
Yeah.
The tough one. I mean, the best thing that came out of the 80s might have been Top Gun. Big Top Gun. I'll send you guys a picture of me and my friends. We all had mustaches and bomber jackets for a night out this summer. But
that's awesome.
Oh, Ben, I mean, I read your book, and I'll be honest, I'm a little bit of a procrastinator. I read about 180 pages of it yesterday. I got through like 20 pages last week, and yeah. I'm a power reader. Like if I go through, like I'm gonna power through it. But what was funny, when we got to the end and you were talking about the psychology part of things, actually wasn't the first book that you were going to write. So I was gonna ask you what kind of inspired you to write a book. I know the first one about sports psychology didn't go through. I would love to see that become a project someday, and I think I'm gonna touch on that topic a little later. But what kind of compelled you to go through and write Funky?
Okay, so I actually have a second sports psychology book that's already done. There's some finishing touches, and then we would still have to find a publisher and all that stuff. But it is done. Not the original, a different one with a different theme, but I think it's even better. It was coronavirus, right? They put us in our houses and they said you can't do shit, and I'm like, I got to do something. I can't sit in my house for 3 months straight or whatever, So I was like, hey, what can I do? So there was a few different projects that I'm like, well, I'll try this or I'll try that, I think for 2 weeks, I was like, okay, I can chill out for 2 weeks. And then when they just kept extending it, I'm like, I got to figure out something to do. I cannot, so we didn't open our business for 3 months. We did start doing practices with college wrestlers probably after about a month and a half because they were all home. And it was like, my justification was like, it's not actual business. It's just a bunch of friends getting together to work out. Surely no one could be mad about that, right? So we had Max and I would go like 6 days a week. So I would go 3 days. He would go 3 days where we had these college wrestle workouts. And I mean, all of our guys were home, right? Because they couldn't train at college and they were all bored too. So, we were having 25 to 30 college kids per practice for, 6 days a week. We probably did that for, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks before we opened back up for real business.
Right on. So when you jump in here, Teague, on this one, when you started writing a book, Ben, because you talk about even in this current book, I listened to it because I don't like reading, so I did the audio version.
Okay.
So when you talked about it, you talked about when you find something that you really love, you really dive into it. Like you it's everything that you do. Like wrestling was in general. Did you find yourself with that with the books? Do you because it is about something that you're passionate about? But as far as just writing a book in general.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the truth is I didn't actually do all the writing. I found a person. Okay. I suck at writing. I can speak relatively well. But as far as grammar, punctuation, etc., I suck. So guy who I reached out to is a guy named Chuck Mindenhall. He wrote my favorite MMA article about me ever. I think he's a really awesome writer. And he was in the same situation I was. We were bored. We had nothing to do, So he agreed to it. So essentially we kind of said, we talked preliminarily on the phone, but he kind of knew my whole career. He knew the sport of mixed martial arts, which I think he does a great job of intertwining like the early days of mixed martial arts, which is funny because when I was starting MMA, I didn't think of it as early days, but now when you look back, it was absolutely the early days. And so after my hip surgery, I couldn't do anything for a couple weeks. So he came out for 3 days. And we kind of just like talked through, we talked for like 12 hours a day, right? And we just kind of went through like everything that we wanted to put in there. And, went back and forth. And then he would go back and he would write a chapter. And then I would read the chapter. I'd make the corrections I want to make. And then we get on a call like this and we would kind of talk through, if there was points of disagreement or things I wanted to add in. And so we would do that after every chapter. And then as the whole book finished, did it again. And then after I did it, then I sent it to my mom, my dad, my brother, my wife, and I think John Mess, my high school coach. They read through it, so it was just like, it was kind of a process. So it ended up taking almost 2 years where I thought it would take like 6 months or so, but I'm really happy with how it came out. I think he's awesome. That was why I talked to him right away.
It was a good book.
Well, I was really impressed with the writing. I was going through it. I'm like, this dude has footnotes and everything. Of course, Ben finds a way to master writing during the pandemic. I mean, we get another pandemic, we might have a funky biopic on our hands, especially now that we need like a more updated, accurate wrestling movie. But speaking of wrestling, Ben, I think one of my favorite parts about this, and And I know you're talking on Flow one time about how you listen to that 7-hour Joe Rogan podcast.
Oh, it was so
I wish
awesome.
we could pull that off, man. I really wish we could pull it off because there's enough material in this book to where we can do it. But we're a Wisconsin high school wrestling podcast. We're going to kind of stick with that. So I think one of my favorite things about your high school career would be, and I love that you brought up the WWE. Because when I think of your high school career, I kind of think of that WWE where you established yourself as a little bit of a heel or like a bad guy to some people. Or that's how I think that's how people on the forum might view it anyways.
Well, I actually say that was a really formative experience. And I didn't go into it thinking a thing of it in that way. Right. So, and, people older than me will probably remember this, but so the Wisconsin Wrestling, WIWrestling.com, the forum started in, I believe it was the year 2000. If it was started significantly prior to that, I don't remember. So I was at sectionals, which was at Watertown. And Tom McGarvey is obviously the guy who started that. I think he started with Bob Logan, maybe. I think that's right. Don't quote me if I'm wrong on that one. I'm close. But anyway, so everyone said there's these forums and everyone's talking about you. I'm like, what are those? I don't know what those are. There's no social media. There's no Facebook. There's no nothing, What's that? And, and the other thing I talk about a lot, and it's not really in this book, but is when I was a high school wrestler and obsessed with wrestling, there was really nowhere to actually watch wrestling. Like you couldn't go watch college wrestling or international. No, it's the times have changed significantly. So I go on these forums. Everyone's talking about how I'm a pain in everyone's ass because I just take down people and let them up. How Spencer Dominguez and Trevor Spencer are going to kick my butt at the state tournament the following week. And so I went on and said, no, they're not. I'm going to whoop them, And then I started I made a whole bunch of threads, right?
Yeah.
And then it catches the news. So then, Wisconsin State Journal interviews me about it going into the state tournament the following week. And the other thing was
that far.
Yeah. Back in those days, there was no registration process. So you could just post your name as whatever. So there would be a bunch of imitators saying that they were me, And so one thing that was really funny that I never said it. Someone else did it as me, but the Wisconsin State Journal picked up on it. And they said I was going to tech Trevor Spencer in the state finals without back points. So they asked me about it. And I said, yeah, I'm going to. And I didn't say it, but I'm like, yeah, that was me. And then I get by 13, so I did get 2 back points in that match. So I get really close to tech volume. It was with a couple of back points. I didn't say it, but I was like, yeah, sure, I said that. I claimed it. And but then that really gave me. Then moving forward, I obviously antagonized everyone, but that gave me a real good look, 15 years ahead of time of what Twitter would become. Like when you get group psychology and everyone. Jumps in, especially when they're semi-anonymous. And so then the next couple of years, I went on to start my own forum because Tom was deleting too much stuff because I was, effing with people. He was. Tom was trying to protect me. I'm like, I don't need protection. I'm bringing it on.
Moderator.
Too much moderating. And so I would try, I talk about this book, I would just try to antagonize people. And, I think that gave me great lessons for later on in mixed martial arts of how to engage the crowd, engage the fan base, and antagonize people.
It makes sense now. It does all make sense now. Yeah. So obviously back in the day, you and I used to chatter back and forth once in a while and stuff like that. I didn't understand MMA and the UFC world because I didn't dive into it. I didn't watch a lot of it because when it first started, it seemed like it was the WWE gimmick. You had a guy that was 500 pounds fighting a guy that was 180 pounds, So I was like, well, this is kind of unrealistic. I don't even like this fighting style. But then, as it started to evolve into an actual, it was a combat type sport, you kind of pay attention a little bit, but then you hear about this guy from Wisconsin. Yeah. And he's got a youth club, and then saw the persona that, that it was what you had to do, as part of the game, and not understanding that you kind of sit back and this guy's running a youth club, but he's out there talking trash. And it's just kind of you don't want your kid to do that because you don't know if it's going to slap him in the face. It's why are you doing this with your kids are going to see this. But then you start to understand it. You actually sit down and understand the game behind UFC and listening to what you spoke about, and not I mean, I guess an intimidation factor, but you're getting in their head. You know, it's a game, man, and that's kind of what now I see. I mean, Liam's doing it. You know, he's kind of gets a little up there a little bit, but he knows where. I think he's paying attention to what you guys do. But it is definitely a skill. You know, it's knowing where to go with it, what to say, and how to say it. It's definitely a skill, and you can definitely look like a moron doing it.
I mean, that's for sure. I think I tried to stay. Obviously, I knew, by the time I got into mixed martial arts, I was very close to being a parent. I was running a wrestling club, not in the very, very beginning, but as I got so, and I just generally think this, just even if I was not either one of those things, right, wrestling club coach or a parent, it's like there should be a boundary line. Like I think McGregor crosses the boundary line too much, and I actually think most of his best trash talk was before he crossed that, because once you cross the boundary line, like talking about Poirier's wife, talking about Khabib's religion, people are like, nah, too much for me. I'm not in on this. Like,
you can't come back from that.
I'll beat you up. You suck. I'm in on that. Talking about people's wives and religions, and they're like, nope, I'm out. Too much. So, I think there's a healthy boundary to keep that within. And, like I said, from the forums early on in high school, and then, college, and I said this in the book, it was funny because for me, I got to be the good guy because everyone cheers to underdog, because Missouri had never ever had he had never ever had a national champion, and so I got to be the good guy, even while I was kind of doing a lot of those shenanigans.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, the cool thing about that Missouri run was they viewed Missouri as the David, but you just said like you knew that you were still the Goliath as an individual, which that absolutely got me fired up. Was the forum where you heard about that Hampton guy like saying that he could beat you? Because
he said something. He actually made a post on there. I wish I could save it, and that was when I was really into Muhammad Ali, and I remember I wrote him a poem back about how after the match he was going to have his girlfriend hang some tissues. I don't remember what the entirety of the poem was, but I remember it was Alex Ali wrote a lot of poems. I wrote a poem, and I remember, and it was like, after I whoop you, your girlfriend's going to be giving you a bunch of tissues or something like that. Crying. And, sure enough, classic. I think I tech called him in like 2.5 minutes.
That's awesome. That's good
stuff. I actually just met his, who did I meet? I met his
daughter.
No, I don't think his daughter. I want to say there was some relation, and I think I met him in the airport because I've been flying a lot lately. And I want to say he ended up playing football at Wisconsin. And I said that to them, and they're like, "No, I don't think he did." And I'm like, "No, I think he did." So it wasn't. Significantly younger. The person was like, I want to say they were like 20, and obviously we are. He's probably my age, so we're getting close to 40. So maybe they weren't, aware at that point in time.
I just thought that was so funny. I have found out. I'm sorry, Brad. Kind of.
No, you're good. You're good.
Under there.
No,
I read he said like a lower division guy who was talking cash about you, and I was like, that kind of sounds like Luloff. So I had to text you.
I did wrestle him twice, though. But no, I always love. Jason's a great dude. No, I wrestled him 3 times. I love Jason. He's great.
Dude, how many matches? Well, because you said that you like killed a dude, but I remember Jason always talks about how he was up like 8-0 on you.
I don't think it was that much
at the duel, but then you started top in the third period, and then you ended up coming back and beating him pretty handily. And so, I know your state.
I want to say it was okay in that match. I want to say so he got up on me at Freestyle State, and I pinned him on a gut wrench. I think we wrestled 2 years in a row, I want to say, at the Freedom Invite or something like that. That one I took a chicken to, and everyone got really mad about that.
Wait, like a live chicken?
I would just find random shit. I would just take it, and then people would get mad about it, and I thought it was hilarious. But Jason,
I'm beginning to see.
I want to say he was it wasn't up 8-0. He's crazy on that one. He was up by a couple. But I used this as a teaching point actually at the high school. I said, I was the takedown guy. All I did was take people down and let them up. And Jason was also really good on his feet, but I sensed that I was significantly better on top than he was on bottom. And so in the third period, instead of letting him go and try to take him down again, because in matches, you can come into the match with a notion of how it's going to go and what your best strategy is to win, right? But that doesn't mean that that's how it's going to play out. And so I said in the third period, I could tell he was getting a little tired. And I could tell I was way better on top than he was on bottom. And I think I turned him 2 or 3 times in the third period to win the match. a handful of points. And I said, so when we're going into matches, we should have an idea of what our strategy is going to be to win the match. That doesn't mean that strategy is guaranteed to win, and you have to make adjustments in match.
Yeah. Yeah. I would take that. I mean, obviously wrestling off your strengths, you're going to wrestle your strengths. You're going to go in and figure if they work, and then you can go off from there. Cause that's literally what we've been, like I tell Liam, when you're in a tournament, don't try new stuff, do the strengths, because then you can actually go to practice. You can find the weakness in your strengths, and you can refine things a little bit more and discover other things. But so I take it with any kind of loss that you had, though. I mean, it seemed like you kind of, it bothers you. Don't get me wrong. It's not to say that a loss doesn't bother you, but it seemed like you already kind of had like a mentality of moving on from it, and no matter what happened, I was going to go on to the next one and probably beat this guy anyways. So,
yeah. So, when you talk about like things that you believe in, because I think this is important. The first thing that I believed in was my work ethic, because I knew I worked really hard, and then the second, and it kind of ties into that, is that if I had enough time, I was going to get better than everyone, and I saw it in action. Right, there were so many guys who in 6th grade they beat me, in 7th grade I'd be way better than them. In 7th grade they beat me, in the 8th grade I'd be way better than them. Right, and then different guys beat me, and then I would jump them also. And so I think at its heart, and I freaking hated to lose. But I also kind of lost. I put myself in a position where I lost relatively frequently. So at the end of the day, losses are feedback, right? From multiple standpoints. It could be from a technical standpoint. It could be a mental weakness that you have. It could be a physical. You're not strong enough, fast enough, good enough cardio, right? It could be these things. And so if mentally you can handle it, if you're tough enough to handle it, then the reality is, you should compete relatively frequently and get as much feedback as possible to work on.
Yeah. Was that something that you wound up getting also from Coach Steiner when all that kind of went down, when you were having doubts and you kind of had that talk with him?
No, that was just really that performance anxiety. I don't know. I don't know that I really had a guide in that. So, my first wrestling coach was Dale Borchard. His son was a state champ. I'm still friends with him. Dale unfortunately passed away last year. My dad was around a lot. He kind of stepped back from coaching probably in 5th or 6th grade because he knew he was a pain in the ass. Wrestling ring obviously was my high school coach. But I don't think any of them was really like, you need to go compete more. It's like I wanted to, like I remember this is a throwback. And none of the younger kids are gonna know what the hell I'm talking about. But there used to be a magazine called The Crossface, right?
Oh,
and I talked about, there was no social media or really a wrestling website. So like in middle school, it'd be like, open up The Crossface. Oh, there's a tournament in Mineral Point. Hey, Dad, can you take me to Mineral Point this Saturday? Look, there's a tournament, And so it was definitely me saying like, hey, can I go here? Can I go there? Can I, and like really pushing the issue. And so I don't think there was anyone really directing me on that front.
That's impressive to me that as a kid, I mean, you're not even out of high school and you're finding your way out of that. That's pretty good. That's a mentality
probably eighth grade. Probably is when I think I really started saying like, oh, can I go here? Can I go there? That type of 8th grade.
That's good. I mean, that's a hunger you don't see in a lot of kids. There's a lot of wherewithal with that. That's for sure. I'll let you go here, Teague. Just a little bit.
No, you guys. I was letting you guys cook there for a minute. I just have like all the nerdy like, oh, how'd this match go in high school? But I wanted we were talking about losses, and I guess I think one of my favorite moments from like your high school career, and not favorite because of like the match, but. I loved how you brought it to Marcus Levesser. Like you just said, like, yeah, I'm gonna beat this dude's ass. Like I'm gonna take it to him. And then
what are you putting words in my mouth for?
Didn't you say? I mean, you were like, you basically threw down the gauntlet with. Okay, yeah. So we'll backtrack there. You threw down the gauntlet with him at Bi-State.
Okay, so I wanted to compete against Marcus. So that year, both that year and my senior year, I would pretty much just float wherever the better guys were. I would wrestle that weight class. Our team at Arrowhead wasn't very good. So I kind of had Coach Messman gave me the flexibility to move around. And then, that obviously then likely gave the guys who weren't as good at Arrowhead the easier matches. And I would take the harder matches, kind of anywhere. So like my junior year, I would float from 52 to 71. My senior year, I floated from 60 to 89. I would wrestle any of those weight classes where I could get good matches.
Nice.
Yeah. So my senior, or that was my junior year. My junior year, I knew 152 at Body State was going to be way tougher because they had this guy named, actually, I don't know if you remember, this guy named Mark Myers. I'm guessing that was his name. Really short, stubby dude from West Salem, won a couple state titles. Either one, two. I think that's his name. So there was him, and then there was Marcus Levesser. At that point, I really had no national level success. I had won the state title the year before, but didn't place at Fargo, or and there wasn't really anything else to go to. So I knew Marcus was likely to be significantly better than me, but I didn't care. I wanted to see where I was at, and he was number one in the country at that point. So he was obviously a very explosive athlete, and he went on to play. He wrestled in Division III NCAA. He should have been a Division I wrestler. I don't know what he was doing. Mm-hmm. I think he talked about it on a podcast. I didn't listen. But he was undefeated in Division III wrestling. He was just too good. He shouldn't have been wrestling in that division. He should have been wrestling in Division I. Yeah. But he also wanted to play football, so he played football as well. He took me down 4 times in the first, and then 6 times, and then 2 times in the second, and then so I was kind of wearing him down in the third. I got kind of close to a couple takedowns, but didn't get any. So I think I lost 12-6 would be my guess. 6 takedowns for him, and then 6 escapes from me, somewhere in there. But I remember the crowd went ape shit. They loved it because I was torturing everyone. I was taking everyone down, letting them up the whole season. And then this dude was doing it to me, and they're like, "Yeah, get him back, get him back." And so, but that was a good moment for me because it was like, okay, I know that I'm not the best in the country yet, but I also did, they probably thought I got embarrassed, but it was like as the match went on, I was getting closer and closer. I was starting to figure it out, figure out the rhythm. And then I remember a really important moment for me would be later that summer. They do at Fargo, they do the All-American walk, right?
Yeah.
Where they all put all the Americans on stage. And I took 4th, and he was right next to me. He took 4th. So I was at, what were the weight classes then? I think it was 165 and 154 or something like that. And he was right next to me. And it was like, I freaking got better. I got better, right? Because I'm next to this dude before. He was way in front of me. And now I'm standing right next to him. Like, I made some serious improvements.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Was that tournament that happened at? Was that a fur coat and like gold chain event, or was that?
I State. So he just said that he was on a podcast a couple weeks back, and he said, and I definitely remember this, but he said I did it to him, which I don't recall doing. But there was this commercial. I was just telling people I forgot. There was this commercial in that year where the guy popped out of the. This is before Bluetooth speakers and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Just FYI. So there was these things called boom boxes that were relatively large, and then you had to have a CD to put in the boom box or a tape potentially. And so there was this commercial. I actually found it where this dude, I think it was either Adidas or Puma or something. Dude jumped out of the bushes and had the tiger playing, and he changed these runners. So I thought that was the funniest shit ever. So I was. I'm doing that, right? So I just would do it at tournaments, and people would not know what to do. Sometimes they would like sprint and try to get away from you, and you had to run fast to keep up with them. Sometimes they turn around and look at you, but then you just looked at them back, and then but there was like a standoff for a while, like all kinds of funny things that happened. And he said I did it to him. I don't remember. And then he also said I would play, which I don't ever remember doing this to my recollection, but I know there's been other people who doing it. They said I would play Another One Bites the Dust after the match. To my recollection, I never did that. I don't remember it. I mean, Queen's a good band, whatever. But I don't think I did that. He claims I did that. I'm not sure.
So that, I mean, I think I watched Mitchell Messenbrink kind of emulate you one time at one of the AWA duels, except he had his Bluetooth JBL speaker. Okay. He was carrying his speaker around, and it was me. I was sitting in the bleachers that were kind of like 3 or 4 rows out or whatever they had out at the school. And Mitchell's walking around, and he can't hear the music. He wasn't blaring it, but he had this JBL speaker on a strap on his shoulder. Yep, just walking around the gym, and I'm sitting there, and he's playing rap music, and it's me and like a 65-year-old guy sitting by me, 70-year-old guy sitting by me, and he just sets that JBL speaker right on the bleachers, lets that whatever rap music, because I don't even know what it's called anymore. I'm used to old rap, so. But he was playing that, and it was the funniest stuff I ever saw. I was like, he doesn't care. That's awesome. He doesn't care. He's here to wrestle and he's here to have fun. So I think it's great. I think I think having a little bit, I think a lot of times people call it arrogance, but I think having the confidence like that is perfect. I mean, how else are you going to get through something that's tough?
Yes.
You know, you got to be able to tell yourself something eventually, like, this is tough. I'm going to have fun with it, and I'm going to let loose, and I'm going to let go at this tournament. Don't care what happens. You know, I think that's awesome.
Absolutely.
All right, Teague, sorry.
No, I mean, I want to touch on that Levasseur moment, and I didn't even remember. I forgot if you brought it up in the book or not, but like people like cheering for your demise against like a Minnesota guy. That's like, it's almost like obviously everyone knew about you, but that's like an I made it moment. Like, and I think it's so good for the sport too. Like you had these people going crazy, and that's awesome. Like I can't think of another wrestler that really, you know, gets people jacked up like that. You can think of a few moments at the Kohl Center or whatnot, but I think back then, like what you did to generate interest for the sport was absolutely awesome.
Yeah. That's how, you know, fighting. They always say in fighting, they always say you want, and this is WWE also, you want them to cheer for you, you want them to cheer against you. But if they're not cheering, you're not doing your job.
That's a problem. Yep. So you had it sounds. Go ahead, Teague.
on the Spencer Dominguez match, I know it was 12-11. Was there any point during that match where like he had a lead on you or anything? Or was it like a classic Ben match where you were losing by 5 and then you cradle your way back in it, or what?
No, that was actually an awesome match. I want to say I posted it somewhere because I think I converted it from a DVD. I had this DVD series many years ago where I put like some of my best high school and college matches on there.
Nice.
I think I put it on the line somewhere. No, I very back and forth. He was very good. And actually, I got the takedown to tie it up. I was on 8-10. I got the takedown to tie it up 10-10 with 23 seconds left, and we went out of bounds. And I remember there was no doubt in my mind. I cut him. I'm like, I'm going to take him down 23 seconds, right? So I cut him with 23 seconds left. I took him down to win 12-11.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And that was like from a strategy standpoint, I mean, in that moment, there was no second guessing. I knew it was going to happen. But in the strategy standpoint, it's like, well, I should have probably just tried to ride him out to overtime. And then obviously, you know, because then it's, if you don't even get I was probably most likely a better mat wrestler as well. And so if I say in the middle of overtime, no one gets a takedown, then I can win in the rideouts as well. But I remember, you know, when we went out of bounds, I looked at Coach Messerbeck and I said, I'm going to cut him. He said, do it, you know, and it just like, I knew I was going to go get the takedown in the last 22 seconds.
It was that moment. Yeah.
Brad, I got one more question because I forgot it like twice now, and then I'll let you cook for a second here. But
you're good.
I think you know, you talk about in your book how you know, you quit your other sports because there was moments where like the other guys on your team were just giving up, and you realize like you wanted to be in control of your own destiny and of your own results.
Yeah.
Did you ever have those moments in wrestling though, like during duels perhaps, or like maybe during tournaments if guys needed a win, where it'd still be frustrating in like a team score sense if you had guys that weren't leaving it all on the mat that were your teammates?
No, I would say no. I never had that feeling. So those feelings were obviously earlier. So that was kind of one of the things that pushed me more to wrestling. And then so as I got older, I quit football, but that was kind of past that point, but I had kind of understood that. That's a good question because Arrowhead was, you know, Messerbeck's first year Arrowhead was my first year Arrowhead. And we were not very good as a team. We had some decent guys. And obviously Coach Messerbeck would get Arrowhead significantly better, but it doesn't happen overnight, you know, so it took some time to get that rolling. You know, I think I just consider it as like, I want to help as people, you know, and I tell kids this right now is like, I want to help people as much as I can. And if they're willing to help, I will help. But wrestling is an individual sport, right? And if enough individuals can do good things, then the team wins. And I hope we win as a team, but I'm more concerned with myself. And if we can just come together and we can all be concerned with ourselves and do our own job, then the team will have success. And then, you know, so then to take that to like individual athlete perspective is, and I always tell kids this, like, especially, I don't want to crap on other kids, but like, so we have a lot of hyper dedicated athletes at AWA. And so when they go back to the high school teams, there's likely to be either kids who are newer or kids who are not as into it, right? And that's why they don't wrestle year round. And so one of the things they have this frustration, like, why does everyone want it as much as me? And I'm like, well, because you're you, and that's why you're good, because you want it really good. And so what I say is just help the people that want to be helped, right? And you're not going to try to talk someone else. If someone else is a super slacker, you're probably not going to get them to be the hardest worker. But I bet you can find one guy in the room. Just start with one. Find one guy in the room who he wants to work, even if he sucks. Like find a guy who wants to work. That was what I think. I don't remember if I talked about in the book, but
is it Richie Dawn or something?
Well, so Richie Dawn was a kid I helped a lot, but there was two other guys. I don't know how to say the name in the book. It was Joe Milburn and Brian Meyer, and they were like, okay wrestlers.
Yeah.
But for me, I just needed people who would show up consistently in my basement to wrestle with me because there was no club past June. So June, July, August, September, October, November, right? 6 months. There was no club. And so I had to find
Really?
Yeah, there was no Ringers went to by the time Ringers got to May, there was probably four to six people showing up per practice,
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Good in March, good in April, and then you hit the Freestyle Greco State tournament, and then there's barely anyone there, and this is all the way through. I think by my senior year, Advance had started. Troy Steiner had started Advance.
Yep.
Ringers copied them and did a fall practice that year. That was my senior year.
Sure.
Prior to that, there was nothing, and so I'd also probably my junior senior, I convinced Coach Messman. Now you guys are gonna go get Coach Messman on WI sanctions because he hates breaking the rules, but he hates breaking the rules. But I'm like, dude, I need someone to wrestle with. So by my junior senior, I convinced him to wrestle with me on a semi-regular basis in the offseason. But before that, he wouldn't do it because it's against the rules. I'm like, dude, I need you to train with me. And so talked him into it, but he hated breaking the rules. So I get him over wrestle with me on a regular basis. But before that, it was these two dudes, Joe Milburn and Brian Meyer. And it was just like they wanted to be better. They weren't very good, but they were willing to show up every week and work hard. And that was what I needed. Mm-hmm.
So from an athlete aspect, when you talk about how you were trying to elevate a little bit more, and obviously you're trying to bring guys with you that just naturally, just by practicing with them, how did you find yourself progressing? And I'm not putting anybody down that's not any better than someone else, but how did you find yourself progressing with guys that were just maybe a little lesser?
Well, I think obviously the one part of that is that was all I had. Right?
Sure.
The other option is nothing. The other option is literally nothing, So that was all I had. So we're saying this would be like freshman offseason to sophomore year, and then sophomore offseason to junior year. And then, like I said, kind of after that, I believe I got Coach Messman to wrestle with me quite a bit. I think I still probably train with these guys a little bit, but not as much.
Okay.
And so number one, it was all I had, right? So it was just out of necessity that I'm training with these guys. But number two, and this is what I tell other people is, you can get better with anything, right? I mean, there was a lot of days where I just shadow drilled because I had nothing else to do because it's like, hey, I got to work. I can't convince Max to wrestle with me, and these guys are busy, and so I'll just be shadow wrestling in the basement, So that kind of thing. But okay, so then to further, if they're a lower skill level, what I always say, and I kind of talk about this is maybe the beginning of my scrambling, is like I had to find a way to keep it somewhat entertaining for them. I get really mad sometimes about kids in my club when they bitch about this, and I'll kind of explain that. I knew if I just drilled their face into the mat for an hour, they're like, this sucks, I'm not coming back, So I would kind of let them get close to takedowns, or I'd let them score sometimes. When I tried to make it so they didn't know I was letting them score, but putting ourselves in positions where I can actually kind of work. And so I was having to work out of these really subpar positions, in order to score points, because I knew I wanted them to enjoy the session and get something out of it also. So I get so frustrated when, in Holland, we got multiple high school groups all year round, right? I
don't have a partner.
Yeah, well, they're like, oh, I didn't get the partner I want to today. It's like, dude, we have two separate high school groups, and your high school group you're in is 40 guys, and almost all of them are state qualifiers. Like every single person is really pretty damn good at wrestling. Like, you didn't get to wrestle with, now I'm going years back. You didn't get to wrestle with Keegan O'Toole. Partner. There's other good people, and so then, and then the other thing is like if you spend, and this will be more indicative of my college experience, if you spend time and invest in your partners, that will come back to you, because if you can make them better. So like an 8th or 9th grader, it's like, okay, well, you have 4 or 5 years till you leave the AWA room. And if you can make a couple kids around you a lot better, they're going to be your partners, right? Especially like if it's an 8th grader and say there's some 7th and 6th graders, like, Yeah, the age discrepancy is a couple of years now, but it's going to be less. The difference will be less when you get to be 10th, 11th, 12th graders. It's going to be less. So like invest in your partners. And for me, it's not a necessity, but I think it's really important to build everything also.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. What do you got, Teague? What's next, man?
Well, Ben, I'm glad you brought up Keegan O'Toole because I consider myself a leader of the Keegan O'Toole fan club.
Really?
And yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%. Always loved his game. We had him on the show and I like fanboyed for it.
Really?
Like
That's awesome.
Steve was like the host for that. I was just like, Keegan's on the show. Yeah. No, it was great. So I consider this was funny. It's going to kind of be a tangent. I'll bring it back here, but I consider Keegan Wisconsin high school wrestling's GOAT, the greatest of all time in Wisconsin high school wrestling.
Well,
I was thinking
Jake just did that. They did the top 10 of the top last 10 years list. And it was
Keegan and Mitch
wrestled for me, and I would consider myself friends with both them. And I told Nate, listen, I coach Mitchell and I coach Keegan. And so Nate's point in the argument was that Mitchell took a world silver medal. Keegan did not. That was his only point, though. And Keegan actually didn't even have the opportunity to, because if you remember senior year, he did make the junior world team, but the worlds because it was Corona year. And so I said, but when you look at the body of their work, of everything else, and it's like, this is just facts. I'm not trying to back one party or the other. It's like, well, Keegan's got more state title. He had the Fargo title. He had the Super 32 title. He had the who's number one wins. And so I think you can make a compelling case for him to be the best of all time, not just the best of the last 10 years, that's what they did. But my knowledge only goes back to like the year, we'll say somewhere in the year 2000, and then some 90s and prior. I know there were some guys that had good success, but and also just the competitive architecture of high school wrestling was a lot different. I mean, like I said, when I was in high school, really the only thing you could compete in was Fargo. They had it was called Cadet and Juniors or Cadet. I think it was called Espoir also was the 20 and under division but it wasn't like it wasn't like everyone that's really, really good shows up. That's kind of actually been a last 8 to 10 years thing. Super 32 didn't exist. Who's number one didn't exist. I mean, so it was just
that's why I think a 10-year kind of litmus test was pretty accurate as far as where they were going. Because I mean, it's like you were saying, even when I was a kid, I mean, I graduated in 97. When I was wrestling back in the early 90s and late 80s, like there's nothing. I mean, I think my brothers and his buddies went down to Iowa once a year. It was whatever tournament. I can't remember the name of it, but it was like 5 of them. They all went down and that was it. And they came right back to Oshkosh where wrestling was really awesome at the time. But so with that being said, as far as the greatest, I mean, you like look at their body of work, look at what Keegan's done. And Mitchell was great. He was fun to watch and he still is. I watched him over at the Bill Farrell, but just
Mitchell
Keegan
had a really hard spike at the end of his high school career. Where he putting together and figured it out.
Well, I'm glad you answered that in general because I was going to segue into I was thinking about okay, I got to ask Ben who the GOAT of Wisconsin wrestling is. And then I get to a point in your book, you're doing this study and you and your research pal, you ask all these former champions, when did they realize they were great? And then they said oh, I really didn't think I ever was. Yeah. And I hit a point in the book and you say greatness is an abstract. And I'm just like, damn it. I can't even ask a guy who the greatest is when he doesn't even believe in greatness as a concept.
No, I think in the best of all time, you can, and so fighting, I think wrestling is almost even easier. Fighting, there's do you consider the peak? Do you consider who they beat? Do you consider their record? What do you consider? And in wrestling, it's hard to consider eras because there are differences. That's why I think the last 20 years, it's been relatively similar. And I think it's kind of easy to say, but I mean, from that psychological study is they just didn't think in those terms. Right. And I think thinking in those terms is highly unhelpful, especially to kids, and I say, we don't have a lot of these. I think there's a lot of humility at AWA because there's always someone that can whoop your ass, even say Sinclair who's getting really good. Well, Keegan comes back and beats up on him, or Park comes back and beats up on him. So there's, I got to freaking tie him up tight and give him a whooping. Right. So, so there's a humility, but, I think something I saw a lot when I was teaching wrestling camps. I did that a lot, say 2003 through 11, somewhere in there. And now AWA is kind of taking over. I travel once in a while. I did one. I was at Thanksgiving with my in-laws. I did one in Arizona a couple weeks ago, but I don't do a lot. You'll see these local kids who are like the best guy on their team or maybe the best guy in the area, and they think they're the shit. They think they know it all, and they don't got to listen to anyone. Even, you're an NCAA champion. You come and you say, hey, this is how I do it. And they're like, no, this is how I do it. And you're like, okay. We're not really at the same level.
Okay.
Like, you should just listen to me. But okay, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
So like that's like when kids start thinking in those terms, that becomes counterproductive to their future success.
Like
I think I
Zach
heard a
Hampton,
comedian
for
say,
example.
I don't know how I'm enough to speak on this thought, but that's possible. He did not understand the level.
There's a comedian that said, I think it might have been Daniel Tosh, that we overuse the word greatest of all time, or what was it? You are just over exuberating words that really are used for like huge moments, and we're overusing these words and over kind of glamorizing things as far as like what people have done or what they haven't done. I think it like you said though too, it messes with a kid's mind when they hear about, oh, he's the greatest, he's the best one here, he's the best of this. And we just found out a couple weekends ago that some of the guys who are considered the best also take losses. So I mean, it happens.
Absolutely. And so obviously the kids love the word GOAT right now, which was not, that was a term Ali actually kind of, I don't want to say trademarked it, but he was the first one to my knowledge that used it. And now kids are and so now I don't think they actually mean like the greatest of all time. I think it's a saying of, it means like, oh, you're really good or something like that. I don't know. I guess I don't know exactly what's inside their brains, but
who does?
Something to that effect.
Who does?
Yeah, don't even try with them, man. It's not worth it.
What else you got? What do you got, Teague?
I guess going off of that interview with Keegan, I know one thing he talked about, he attested that he thinks wrestling's gotten better in like the recent years. And I think part of that is due to you coming back to the state and giving back and teaching these kids, kind of that scrambling, that cradle style. And I guess I just want to get your take on that, because even Keegan said, he's like, yeah, I think at some point there could be freshmen coming in, like where there's a few that are going to end up being better than me. And that's just kind of the evolution of wrestling. And I guess just your take on that.
You're talking about wrestling from a technical standpoint.
Wisconsin.
We'll say Wisconsin wrestling.
Yeah. I'll give a quick blurb on technical wrestling, since people can actually watch what everyone else is doing on Flow and other platforms. Wrestling has been on this hyperloop where the technique is moving faster than it's ever has before, because everyone can see everyone else, right? That's really important. From a state level, I'm going to put this out here. You know what? I was getting annoyed because someone was telling me some other club was better than us. And I'm like, I'm a facts guy. So I can't, that's not my feelings. These are the facts. In the last 5 years of high school wrestling, AWA has had 27 guys nationally ranked on Flow Wrestling. Of that, 14 of them were in the top 10. Number two is Crass Trained with 5.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3 is 1. And there's a lot of them at 0. Guys, other clubs, you aren't close to us. It is not a competition. We are here. You are down here. Okay. Now, as far as that said, one of our stated goals was to make Wisconsin really, really good when we came back. And we knew these other clubs weren't that good. So we know what we had to do. We had to make a bunch of clubs, right? And we had to get kids on that level. And so you have someone like Josh Wagner. I say if you separate AWA, Josh, number 2 was Crash Train. Josh Wagner, I believe, has had 7 guys in the top 20 in the last 5 years.
There'll be more,
right? And there'll be more. But so AWA Lake Country, AWA Mequon, and AWA Green Bay are all above number 2.
Yeah,
separate them individually. Obviously the other ones are coming along. But so we knew we had to do this because one of the things you see in Pennsylvania, Ohio, New Jersey, these really elite states, is they get to compete against other kids who are on that level, So you have Ethan Riddle, Mirasola, or AWA duels. You have, Sinclair, Mirasolas, or Riddle, Mulvaney, or Bast and Wolbert. And so you need to be able to kill those things more than once in a while, And obviously those guys are competing each other in matches, but they're also competing with each other in practice. We had the Fargo prep camp, 60 kids. who are working really hard with high level coaching. And the other thing is we've been able to make a bunch of kids really, really passionate about the sport of wrestling. And that's how I feel about wrestling. That's how Max feels about wrestling. Josh, Coach Messenbrink, right? All these other coaches, they're very passionate about the sport of wrestling. And they're passionate about helping kids. So we knew we had to build it. We might have a big announcement coming tomorrow.
Ooh.
Watch our social media.
Oh boy. Okay. Yeah, so I want to, I do want to reiterate that
our stated goal is to make Wisconsin wrestling the best in the country. We still got a long. Yes. We've made some great progress. There's never been a point in time where. So Wisconsin has 12 nationally ranked kids right now. Only one of which doesn't train at AWA, which is Coy Hopke, who trains at Pinnacle. There's no other kids nationally ranked currently. I know Braden Sonntag has been in and out. I don't think there's anyone else who's really like super on the cusp. At least not off the top of my mind. But then someone like Pennsylvania's got 50. And you're like, we gotta wait to go. We got some work to do, boy.
Right.
That kind of humbles you a little bit, And in some years, Pennsylvania maybe only has 25 or 30, but that's still a long ways above 11. So when we look at it, it's like, okay, we've made some really good progress, but we still got a lot of work to do.
Well, and I talked about it on several.
Brad, I'm gonna tie off this topic here real quick. So going back, hypothetical, who wins a duel like in terms of wrestling being better in Wisconsin? Who wins a duel, like an all-star class of 2021 wrestlers or an all-star class of 2001 wrestlers?
That would be heavily dependent on the year. And then also if you give kids the training. If you give kids the training to
that's true.
The modern era technique, I think it would change a little bit. But to your point, or to the point I just made about the national ranked kids, someone was pissing me off, so I went and freaking looked it up, and just because I knew I was right, I just wanted to confirm that I was right, and I was not being counterfactual. I love Jordan Crass, I think he does a really outstanding job, so I'm not going to try to trash him. And he's actually had 5 national ranked guys, which is really good. Everyone else, you're at 1 or below, so just stop. Okay, 1 or below. No one else close. So when you consider how good these classes are, and you even look back to 2018, 2017, there was a national ranked kid here, a national ranked kid there, and now it's there's gonna be a national ranked kid at almost every single weight, pretty much all the weights. You're gonna have someone, and maybe even in some weight classes, the one point last year we had Clayton and Connor and Aiden all in the top 6 at 182, right? So I think you're going to have that. I think we're going to have more of those moving forward. We have a lot of kids who really, really love the sport of wrestling, and obviously as an organization and as coaches, we continue to improve, right? That's our goal, is to get better at what we do, and really, really locked in on that.
All right, sorry, Brad, you're up here.
Yeah, no. And honestly, I could probably end it with this. I have commented several times on episodes that I've done about the level of coaching, especially talking to Minnesota people who have had D1 coaches coming from colleges that were coaching middle schools, not just high schools. They were also coaching middle schools, and you could see that state getting better. Right. Now, as we have started to have that, since you've come back from college and brought, and Crass, all those guys who went to college and wrestled recently that know of the recent technique, and obviously you were an innovator. Ever since that's come back to the state, you've seen the state elevate. Like you said, the numbers don't lie. We were here, and we're doing this now. And you're only helping other coaches. That's because if they're jealous about what's going on in your room, they're going to do something to change, or they're going to die.
They got to keep up. We're setting a very, very strong pace, and they got to keep up. And then I think, so I think you're nailed it though about the Division I thing in Minnesota. The other place that's really evident there is Pennsylvania, who's the best. They have 14 Division I colleges, and a couple of their teachers colleges. So they have so many Division I coaching at the high school and probably youth middle school level. And that is very impactful. And I think that's going to be something that increases in Wisconsin, because now we are having a lot more kids go to wrestle at a high level. And even the Division III level, Wisconsin has a lot of great Division IIIs. Eau Claire is doing a great job. Coach Bader, lacrosse. Malachek's doing a great job. Nick Becker's doing a great job at Parkside. So I think we're kind of going to have this era where we have a bunch of people who have. I left someone. Who did I leave out? Who's doing really good Division III? Platteville. He's doing a good job. Whitewater's doing a good job. They've been kind of up and down. I feel like. Oh, Claire, I said them.
Yeah, that was the first.
Maybe I didn't miss anyone. Maybe I didn't miss anyone. But anyways, a lot of college coaches are doing a really good job, and a lot of college athletes who are having success. And yes, I think I know with our athletes, the ones that are in college, I have a good relationship with almost all of them who have graduated and left, and they love wrestling, they love coaching. I have a hard time seeing even the ones who go in and do, like, say, Dom Dentino, he wants to be a dentist. His ass better be coaching at AWA or somewhere else. I'm going to badger him, right? Or Andrew Crone, who's a financial advisor, he still comes in and helps out once or twice a week. These guys really love the sport and they want to give back and they're passionate about it. So I think we're going to see more and more. I know, Crass, who, like I said, I said he does a really good job. He's had Mason Kaufman came back and was helping out with him. And, I think he's going to have the same thing with him and his area and his guys. Is some of those guys that he's coached are going to have success are going to come back and help. Right. And that's, the more the merrier, right? The more really good high level guys you have, the better.
Right. And just like I said, it's a test to especially what you alone have brought to the state as far as wrestling goes. I mean, I ask all the time, and you were asked this question as well. How much more can this sport evolve? We have all this coverage now.
So much.
We have all this different technique. I mean, everything's growing and developing. I mean, can we go another stratosphere? Can we go to another level?
I would imagine that's the case. Yeah. Because I mean, there's even things like, I was highly innovative, but then you watch a Nolf do a Nolf roll or a Win Dix. It's so simple. Why did I think of that shit? It's so easy. Like, why didn't I think of that? And then a guy like. I get it's great for me because Keegan comes back and I get to pick his brain. And, I think that's one of the things I have a lot of respect for not only him, but other guys' intellect. And when they push, I'm going to push back. I'm going to, they say, this is the way to do it. I'm going to say, why is that the way to do it? And I'm challenging them to have good answers. And so,
like a math teacher.
Obviously that's just this is my club, but I think as a whole, wrestling is kind of going to go to, it's going to go to bigger and better places. Obviously, things are going to be very cyclical in nature. Like, when one thing takes center stage, then everyone says, okay, how do we stop that one thing? And there's a lot of emphasis put on that. And then maybe something else kind of takes a back seat and it is kind of forgotten about. And then people forget how to defend it and they're not spending time on it. And then it comes back, So I think we definitely see some of that. And then there's things that'll be eternal, like a single leg. A single leg is eternal. You're always going to be able to attack a single leg, a double leg, right? So there's these things that I think they'll live on forever, but then everyone will continue to get better at the nuances inside and out of those positions.
Right on.
Ben, I don't know if 12:30 is like a hard cutoff for you because I got 1
minute. I'm kind of like I drank too much coffee, so I'm kind of like
well,
kind of like on my FRL where I gotta take a piss. But I'll give you 5 minutes. I do have a couple other important things to do. I got a lot. I was really happy I got a lot done for the podcast. I'm putting up our summer camp dates. They were supposed to be up last Sunday and I got delayed, and so I was getting them up today, and I made a lot of progress prior to the show. So I got to get back to work on that in a few minutes.
Yeah.
So I guess on a bright side of this, we have a lot more to talk about. So like maybe there's future episodes. Brad could be the official host or whatnot. I think this could be a conversation that like this isn't our only conversation between us three, hopefully. But the question I have for you, and I'm glad we were just talking about club stuff, but you see like the results that Aiden Sinclair at a dual meet last weekend or at a dual tournament only gets like 1 match or 0 matches or something. And I see you guys like you have your P&L event taking place this weekend. Going along with that, I see on Facebook, like the Stelts are talking, we could see wrestling becoming more club centric in the winter.
I don't think so. I don't like that. I strongly disagree with most of the things that Lucas Stelt says.
Okay.
Probably not all of them. Probably not all of them, but a high majority. I'm like, no. I mean, I don't follow them. I don't listen to them. But every once in a while, someone will share something, and I'm like, oh God. And I think he tries to make these obnoxious points just to be obnoxious. I don't really know, or to be a know-it-all, with something to that effect, you know. But I really disagree with where he's coming. Well, even just in the application of how do you make elite wrestlers type thing, you know.
Yeah.
So I had explored for a while. I had explored the Valiant Prep model, what they're doing in Arizona, and I had explored doing a few other things. And you know, because here's right. So at AWA we have balance, right? We want to help people achieve at the very, very highest of levels, you know, and at the same time we want to make wrestling accessible to as many kids as possible because we love the sport and we love what it does for kids. So that's a balance, right? Because those things don't all have the same. They're not all the same, right? If you weigh too heavy this way or weigh too heavy this way, if you weigh too heavy on the new kids, you're gonna not give the best kids what they want or what they need. If you weigh too heavy on the best kids, you're not going to be accessible to everyone, you know. And so those things got to balance each other. But this fall, you know, the rankings came out for Flow, the newer ones after all the seniors got pulled out, right? And Max and I, you know, we kind of been talking about this topic of like, you know, do we make like a school that doesn't compete in the WIA who can just go wrestle at the Ironman and those things for your Aiden Sinclairs and your Mirasolas and your guys who want to compete at that level and they have a really high drive to be successful, you know? And then we looked at the rankings. We had 9 guys in the top 5. We had 9 guys in the top 5. And it's like, Max, we're doing it. We don't need to do anything else. We don't need to do it. We're doing the damn thing. Like we don't need it. We have 9 guys in the top 5. We're doing it like this. And, you know, I think it's healthy for every community to have a strong program. That's like one of the things we do with our youth is, so in Heartland, for example, a lot of the local clubs are Monday, Wednesday. So we go Tuesday, Thursday, Friday to purposely avoid their practice days because we want the local youth clubs to be strong. I think Max Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because his are in that area, they're mostly Tuesday, Thursdays. We want the local youth clubs to be strong. We want the high school to be strong. We think that's really, really beneficial to what we're doing as well. So, you know, we have no desire to pull and make it a club only thing. The P&L events, it's going to be high school in the fall, youth in the winter, and then youth and high school in the spring. And so, it's not going to pull any of the best kids away. I don't like you know, I know gymnastics does that. I don't think it's necessary. I think wrestling is a good thing going. And I think, you know, what I said about 9 guys in the top 5, we can balance both worlds here.
Well, and you guys
there's this sentimentality about like getting on a singlet and lacing up for like your home school. Or like you'll always remember wearing like the baby blue singlets. And I talked with Brad for an hour and a half about my D2 team getting its ass kicked in the state finals, you know, like it's
Well, and you guys, I mean, Ben, you guys also dial your practices down for the high school kids during season too. I mean, because you know that they're going to be at high school practices. So
that's
you guys have an understanding.
A couple of these clubs, I think they're knuckleheads because they want to run 3 days a week or something during the high school season. It's like, that is so counterproductive to those kids being
and their business
high school teammates, right? And being good for their teams because if they're, you know, I've literally heard the club coach say, don't go hard at your high school practice so you can come work hard here. And it's like, oh my freaking God, you know, you're creating such a bad thing. And, you know, we, I believe, I think it would be reciprocated. I have a great relationship with every high school coach in the area here. I think Max would say the same thing about his area. Josh, I would likely think the same thing. And, you know, obviously that's something we push Pat and push Jordan at our new locations is like, do not have a bad relationship with the high school. Talk to them, communicate with them. You guys should have both the same interests, right? And you're all moving in the same direction. So it should be very symbiotic.
Right on.
Love it. That was even if it was the answer I didn't want to hear, I appreciate you answering that. And Ben, we appreciate you.
Want to hear? What'd you want to hear?
What? No, that's like that is what I wanted to hear, but I knew like by asking that I might hear something because I really love high school like wrestling. And I'm trying to like get more into the club scene and whatnot, but ultimately like following the schools and everything during the winter, like that's the stuff I'm really all about there. But Yeah, Ben, thanks for coming on, man. Folks, we'll get this release if you're watching live. We'll get a release in podcast form in about like an hour and a half or two. Brad, great collaboration. Sorry if I kind of stole the mic from you, but no, it was a good
your show, dude.
Let's do we'll do another one, and Brad could be the main host, and maybe next month or something.
I'm down. I'm down. We'll schedule a time. Folks, I'll be at Richland Center this weekend. Brad's going to be at the Minnesota Christmas tournament. Ben's going to be, he's a busy dude. I don't know where Ben's going to be.
I'm going to P&L in Arizona, but right. Yeah, you guys, Jacob and Nate at WI Wrestle are doing a great job, and they're actually streaming live events, which I'm really excited about. They're streaming the Ed Stack this weekend. So I will be able to watch my high school wrestlers while I'm in Arizona. It's such a great thing. And I've seen people on Facebook bitching about paying. And for me, it's like they literally don't understand how the world works. These guys, Jake and Nate, I know them, they're my friends, and they're here taking a risk to try to do something, to try to cover wrestling. Yep. Because last year you couldn't watch live wrestling. You couldn't do it. Yep. Right. If I'm in Arizona,
you could
not very much. Like I tried.
YouTube streams.
They're so few and far between. And then like this year, I was trying to go back and scout some people, and I go to Oshkosh on the Water, no links, Bi-State, no link, and these places there's no links. So it was so hard to watch high school wrestling. And now I feel like, oh, good, I got guys in the Ed Stack finals. I can go watch them while I'm in Arizona, and I watched, who did I watch last week? I was traveling. How was that last? I've been so many damn places. I don't really remember where I was anymore. But I was traveling somewhere, and I watched wrestled last week. So I'm just excited that more people are covering Wisconsin high school wrestling. I love Wisconsin high school wrestling, and the more coverage, the better. So I think it's great.
Yeah,
we talk about that like for like 30 minutes on his last podcast about like paying. It's like one of those deals where if you want to pay for, like, there's a lot of content that comes with it. If you don't, then you don't like. No, like completely on Facebook isn't going to do like a whole lot for the situation.
Social media is giving a platform to people that shouldn't have a platform. That's kind of the problem. So I will always say I'm not going to charge for my stuff, but that's me. That's what I do. Those guys there's equipment, and I said this on the episode. There's equipment involved. There's time that you have to pay to have your stuff up on a website. There's time involved in it. And if you're putting everything into it and it's something you're trying to do for a living, of course you're going to charge money. Unless you're a monkey living in a cage throwing poop at people, you're going to understand that they're trying to make money from it. That's just the way that it is. So if you don't like it, how about not comment on it? And some people don't want all they want to see are the rankings. So if you don't want to pay $15 for it, don't pay $15 for it. Someone's got something else somewhere. Rely on that, and that's fine. But to bring people down because of it is completely ridiculous. It's out of hand.
If you don't want it, just don't subscribe. It ain't that hard. Don't subscribe. That's fine. And if you want to watch great wrestling, subscribe. It's cool. Whatever.
Yeah. That's totally fine. I agree.
I got to pee so bad, and I got to get going. Thank you guys. This was fun. I'll see you guys.
Thanks, Ben.
Peace.
Peace.
All right, folks. That was Ben Askren. That was everything I expected and more, Brad. That was a good time.
It was a good interview. I mean, like I said, Ben's an interesting guy. I may have, as far as who I was in the past and the views of things, obviously you grow as a person, you figure out things that are going on, and once you become wiser, there's just nothing but good that's come from him being back in the state with wrestling, so. I had a great time.
Part is, it sounds like this is like just a part one of many parts. So
yeah. Bring it on, man. Next episode we can do on the Vision Quest. That's for sure, man. We'll bring both you guys on, hands down.
I'm gonna tell him to clear up 3 hours for his schedule. So
easily, I am not allowing anything less than 3 hours with the man because there's plenty of stuff that we could talk about. That's for sure. But he'll argue otherwise.
Well, folks, thank you for tuning in on the live. Like I said, I'll be in Richland Center this weekend. Brad will be at the Minnesota Christmas tournament. Ben's going to be in Arizona. He's going to be watching the EH Stack. And this will be out in about an hour or two. And until next podcast, or you see us at a tournament, we will catch you on the flip side. Yes.